For 6 years, the disappearance of Barrett and Corinne was a tragic footnote in the annals of Idaho's wilderness accidents. The official story was simple. A territorial moose shredded their tent, and they fled into the woods, succumbing to the elements. The case only reopens when a cold case analyst, haunted by the inconsistencies, gets his hands on the single tattered strip of tent fabric recovered years ago. Under a high-powered microscope, he discovers the fibers weren't torn by the brute force of an animal, but sliced with the clean, unmistakable precision of a specialized blade. What you're about to hear is a story of how a single thread can unravel a lie that was 6 years in the making. Let me know in the comments if you believe one small detail can be the key to solving any mystery, no matter how old. Owen sat in the sterile, humming quiet of the forensic lab, the only light coming from his desk lamp and the glow of the monitor. It was well past midnight, a time when the ghosts of his unsolved cases felt most present. On his screen was the file for the Hathaway disappearance, case number 734. To most, it was a closed book, a sad but straightforward story. But for Owen, it was a constant, nagging whisper of doubt. The centerpiece of the file was the photograph that had made local news, a massive bull moose, its antlers tangled with the bright, garishly patterned fabric of a high-end camping tent. It was a powerful image, a perfect symbol of nature's brutal indifference. But to Owen, it was too perfect. He had been a junior analyst back in 2017 when the call came in. Barrett and Corinne Hathaway, a young, vibrant couple from Boise, had failed to return from a weekend camping trip in the Sawtooth National Forest. The search party found their campsite eerily tidy, except for one thing. The tent was gone. A week later, a hiker photographed the moose miles away from the original site, the missing tent in shreds and draped over it like a bizarre funeral shroud. The conclusion was swift. The couple had been startled by the aggressive animal, fled in a panic, got lost, and perished in the vast wilderness. Their bodies were never found, but the case was unofficially closed, filed under death by misadventure. It never sat right with Owen. The tidiness of the campsite bothered him. The couple's expensive gear, their cooler, their hiking packs, all left behind. If you were fleeing for your life, would you leave your survival equipment? For 6 years, the questions festered. He remembered the faces of the Hathaway parents, their quiet, bottomless grief at the press conference, accepting a story that felt more like a myth than an explanation. That memory was what drove him now. When the department received a new federal grant to re-examine cold cases with modern technology, Owen knew which file he would pull first. The only piece of physical evidence ever collected was a single 8-inch strip of the tent's nylon fabric, snagged on a branch near where the moose had last been seen. For 6 years, it sat in an evidence bag, a forgotten remnant of a forgotten story. Owen carefully placed the colorful strip of fabric under the lens of the lab's new digital microscope. He adjusted the focus, the woven fibers filling the screen in intricate detail. He expected to see frayed edges, the chaotic, ripping signature of an animal's antlers or teeth. He expected to see fibers stretched to their breaking point, torn apart by brute, unthinking force. He leaned in, his breath held. But that's not what he saw. The edge of the fabric was clean. The fibers weren't torn. They were sheared. Each tiny thread was severed at a near-perfect angle, a straight, uniform line that nature could never produce. It was the unmistakable signature of a sharp, well-honed blade. A feeling of cold certainty washed over Owen. This wasn't a tragic accident. It was a staged crime scene. This was a homicide. The adrenaline he felt was sharp and clean, cutting through years of frustration. The whisper of doubt had finally become a scream for justice. He had a new mission now, to find the hand that held the blade. The next morning, Owen laid out his findings for Detective Greer, the department's liaison for cold cases. Greer was a man who seemed permanently weary, his optimism eroded by years of dealing with the worst of humanity. He listened patiently, looking at the magnified images on the screen, his expression unchanging. "It's a clean cut, Owen. I'll give you that," he said, rubbing his eyes. "But that's all it is. A cut. We have no bodies, no weapon, no suspects. For all we know, the tent was already damaged before they went camping." Owen refused to be deterred. "Look at the report," he countered, pushing the old file across the desk. "Their families said the tent was brand new, a gift for their anniversary. And this cut isn't from a rock or a branch. This is deliberate. Someone wanted it to look like an animal attack." Greer sighed, a long, drawn-out sound of resignation. "Okay, pursue it. But I'm giving you limited resources. Don't expect a task force. This is on you until you can bring me something more than a sliced piece of nylon." It was enough. Owen's first step was to identify the blade. A standard pocket knife wouldn't have left such a clean edge on the tough ripstop fabric. He sent the high-resolution images to a toolmark specialist in Quantico, an old colleague he trusted. The reply came back 2 days later and confirmed his suspicion. The cut was consistent with a specific type of hunting knife, one with a sharpened gut hook on the spine of the blade. It was a tool designed for precise, efficient skinning of large game. It was a poacher's knife. The word poacher opened a new, dark corridor in the investigation. Owen immersed himself in the world of illegal hunting in Idaho. He spent days cross-referencing Idaho Fish and Game records from 2017, looking for known poaching rings that had operated in or around the Sawtooth National Forest. The name that kept coming up was Silas Croft. Croft and his crew were notorious. They weren't weekend hunters looking for extra meat. They were a professional, often violent outfit that specialized in trapping and killing protected species for the black market. The original case file showed that Croft and his men had been briefly questioned in 2017, but they all had alibis, claiming to be working a construction job 100 miles away. The alibis were flimsy, but with no other leads, the detectives had let it go. Frustrated, Owen went back to the original witness statements from the Hathaway families. He read them again and again, searching for any detail that might have been missed. He found it in Corinne's mother's statement. She mentioned how excited the couple had been for their trip because Barrett had just bought a new professional-grade camera and a powerful telephoto lens. They were both passionate amateur wildlife photographers. Corinne's mother had even said they were hoping to get a shot of the Sawtooth wolf pack. Owen froze, the words echoing in his mind. A camera, a telephoto lens. No camera or any photography equipment was ever logged as being found at the campsite. The official report listed sleeping bags, a cooler, backpacks, and cooking gear, but not a single piece of camera equipment. This was the detail that broke the case wide open for him. The official narrative was that they fled in panic. But who runs from a charging moose and leaves behind their survival gear, but remembers to grab a bulky, heavy camera? It made no sense. The alternative was even more chilling. The campsite was exactly as they left it when they walked away. perhaps to track an animal or find a good vantage point for a photo. They never came back. And whoever was responsible for their disappearance had taken the camera. The cut tent and the moose were a distraction, an elaborate piece of theater designed to hide the real reason they had vanished. The camera wasn't just a missing item, it was the motive. They had photographed something they were never meant to see. With his new theory solidifying, Owen went back to Detective Greer. This time, he didn't just have a magnified image of a cut, he had a motive and a potential group of suspects. He laid it all out. The specialized blade used by hunters, the notorious poaching ring led by Silas Croft, and the couple's missing high-end camera. "They were photographers, Greer," Owen said, his voice urgent. "They went off trail to get a picture and they saw something. They saw Croft's operation. That camera is why they're gone." Greer leaned forward, the weariness in his eyes replaced by a flicker of interest. For the first time, the random pieces of the puzzle started to form a coherent, terrifying picture. "Okay, Owen," he said, his voice low. "You've got my attention. Let's go find your poachers." Greer, now fully invested, pulled the strings Owen couldn't. He authorized a full-scale, albeit quiet, investigation into Silas Croft and his crew. They quickly discovered that the construction company that provided Croft's alibi in 2017 had gone out of business a year later under shady circumstances. The owner had been a cousin of Croft's. The alibi was a house of cards. The problem was that Croft's crew had scattered in the 6 years since. Croft himself still lived in a remote cabin outside of Stanley, but the others had moved on. Greer's team focused on finding the weakest link. They found him in a man named Jasper Thorne, who was now living in rural Nevada, working at a gas station and trying to keep a low profile. 2 detectives, with Greer on the phone, paid Jasper a visit. At first, he was defiant, denying he even knew Silas Croft. But under the weight of the detective's persistent, detailed questions, he began to crack. His hands trembled. Sweat beaded on his forehead. After an hour, he broke. The story came pouring out, a torrent of guilt and fear that had been dammed up for 6 long years. Jasper's confession painted a grim and brutal picture. He told them everything, his voice shaking. Back in 2017, they had a large illegal camp set up deep in a restricted part of the national forest. They had been trapping lynx, a protected species, and the pelts were worth a fortune. It was late afternoon when Barrett and Corinne Hathaway, looking for wildlife to photograph, unknowingly hiked right up to a ridge overlooking their camp. Barrett, with his new telephoto lens, didn't see a wolf pack. He saw men skinning a lynx. He started taking pictures. But Silas Croft, paranoid and sharp-eyed, spotted the glint of the sun off Barrett's lens. He and 2 others, armed with rifles, circled around and cornered the couple on the ridge. Jasper said Croft demanded the camera. Barrett refused, trying to protect his wife and the evidence he had just captured. A struggle broke out. According to Jasper, Croft wasn't planning to kill them, but his temper flared. He struck Barrett with the butt of his rifle, and the man fell, hitting his head on a rock. He never got back up. Corinne started screaming, and in a panic, Croft's other man silenced her. It was a senseless, stupid escalation that left them with 2 bodies and a camera full of incriminating photos. They were trapped. But Croft was cunning. He was the one who came up with the plan. He knew the patterns of a particularly large bull moose in the area, one known for its territorial behavior. It was the perfect scapegoat. They drove the couple's bodies miles away and buried them in a deep, unmarked grave in the thickest part of the forest. Then they went back for the tent. Using their skinning knives, they sliced it to ribbons, making it look like the work of antlers. The most difficult part, Jasper said, was finding the moose. It took them the better part of a day to track the animal. They draped the shredded nylon over its antlers, knowing that eventually a hiker or ranger would spot it, and the story would write itself. They had created the perfect illusion of a wilderness accident. Armed with Jasper's sworn confession and the location of the bodies, a multi-agency task force descended on Silas Croft's cabin before dawn. He was taken completely by surprise. At first, he denied everything, his face a mask of cold indignation. But his composure crumbled when Detective Greer placed a small object on the interrogation table, a weathered, heavy-duty digital camera. A search of his property had uncovered it, wrapped in oilcloth and buried under the floorboards of his workshop. And on the camera's memory card was the last photo Barrett Hathaway ever took, a crystal-clear, long-lens shot of Silas Croft standing over a dead lynx. The look on his face in the photo, as he turned towards the camera, was one of pure, venomous rage. It was the face of a killer caught in the act. The recovery team, guided by Jasper, found the grave where Barrett and Corinne had been buried. After 6 years lost in the wilderness, they were finally coming home. For their families, the news was a devastating mix of agony and relief. The unbearable ache of not knowing was finally replaced by the certainty of the truth, however horrific. Owen stood at the edge of the forest as the forensic team worked, the quiet dignity of their task a stark contrast to the violence that had happened there. He looked at the final photo, recovered from the memory card, the one taken just moments before the couple stumbled upon the poachers. It was a breathtaking shot of a golden eagle in flight, its wings spread against the vast blue Idaho sky. It was a photo full of life, beauty, and freedom. For Owen, it was a confirmation of everything he had fought for. He hadn't just uncovered a crime. He had restored the truth, giving a voice back to 2 people whose last moments had been stolen and twisted into a lie. The ghost of Case 734 was finally at peace. The wilderness holds many secrets, but sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who walk on 2 legs. Do you think Barrett and Corinne were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or did their passion for capturing the wild's beauty ultimately lead them into a darkness they couldn't escape? If stories like this one, where persistence and a keen eye for detail bring justice to light, resonate with you, consider subscribing and joining our community. We have many more cases to explore together,